Whakalapuhiatu and a very good evening. Welcome to our first news bulletin for 2014. In our news this evening, Niue's Legislative Assembly gathered for their very first meeting for this year on Monday this week with a number of issues to be discussed. The report from the Controller and Auditor General on the audit of the financial statements for the Government of Niue for the year that ended on the 30th of June 2009 and the year ended 30th of June 2010 was tabled for the House to consider. There were lengthy discussions and concerns also raised by some members, referring to some concerns that were also highlighted by the auditor regarding the use of funds. A majority of questions that were posed to the ministers were for Common Role member Terry Coe. Another issue that was raised was a motion for a vote of no confidence in the government that was lodged by the opposition on Monday. We spoke to one of the parliamentarians that supported the motion to find out the reasons behind this move.
The main thing is to bring up about the government, what they're not doing. And of course the Premier is campaigning now already with the money to the cricket team and the rugby and then taking the old folks around. And so we just want to point out the things that haven't been done and what still needs to be done on this place. And, we're looking mainly like the roads, which seem to be a big issue. And to me, if you do the roads, people will be happy because they see something is done, especially and the telephone and the power cable, etc. So that's the reason, and we're going to bring up about each minister what they haven't been doing and what should be done. We're actually saying that certain things should be done, and that gives them a chance to get those things done if they can before the elections.
Premier Toke Talangi also responded in regards to this motion.
It's their right to lodge. Any member of the Assembly has a right to lodge and move a motion of any kind, including a motion of no confidence. That's their right. I don't have any say on that. If they wish, and if they're unhappy with the way that the government is performing, that's fine. That's their view, that they're not happy with the way that the government is performing. We obviously differ.
The meeting was adjourned to Wednesday for a continuation of motions. However, on Wednesday, the Assembly meeting could not proceed due to only 6 members of Parliament present, and a required quorum for a meeting to be held is 10. The Speaker of the House, Auhiva Levy, noted that only 3 apologies were received to be excused from the meeting: an apology from the Member of Parliament for Tuapa, an apology from the Member of Parliament for Mutalau, currently overseas, and Member of Parliament for Avasele. It was unclear why the rest of members of the House did not show up for this meeting. The motion of no confidence that was lodged on Monday also required some clarifications. Speaker of the House, Auhiva Levy, requested that the motion be presented in a formal letter and announced that legal requirements maintain that the vote of no confidence can be debated at a special meeting within 5 to 10 working days. This was disputed by Common Role member Tsongia Sioneholo, referring to that the legislation or constitution stipulates that in between 5 to 10 days, but does not specifically say working days. The continuation of the new Assembly meeting has now been deferred until Monday next week to complete discussions within the order paper. Meanwhile, the Speaker has confirmed that discussions regarding the vote of no confidence will be scheduled for a meeting on the 3rd of February. However, according to Mr. Sioneholo, he has taken the matter through the courts for clarification as an urgent matter. And Premier Toke Talangi has also announced that the island will be heading to the polls in April following a meeting with caucus this week and after seeking legal advice.
The legal requirements that I have, limits that I have, is 2 years, 9 months before I can call the next election, if you work according to the Constitution and Electoral Act. So 2 years, 9 months is due on the 7th of March, and therefore I'm going to dissolve Parliament on that day, and we will be calling an election on the 12th of April, which is 4 weeks or 5 weeks after that dissolving of Parliament. So dissolve Parliament on the 7th of March, elections on the 12th of April this year.
With dates now available, preparations can begin for electorates, with campaigning expected once the Assembly is dissolved. National general elections will be held on the 12th of April. Government is standing by its decision to offer public servants a compulsory 4-day working week while they get paid for 5 days as part of what it states are extraordinary measures. Premier Toke Talangi said the concept was developed to address population issues and the various community commitments of public servants. As public servants returned to work last week, a briefing with heads of departments detailed plans for implementation. It is anticipated that with better planning, utilization of resources and maximization of efficiency, these measures will be a success and the reduced working days will not affect the productivity of the public service. This week, government's employing body, the new Public Service Commission, sent a circular to confirm that Cabinet has approved the reduction of working days in the public service.
One of the things that we have decided was to look at the possibilities of reducing the number of days of work, but continuing to allow for the pay to be paid on a five-day basis, and allow people to spend that day working for whatever they do for their families, for the community and so on, or for that matter for possibilities of businesses and so on. So that's the reason for that, and the reasons why the government decided to propose and to agree to a 4-day week with a trial period of about 6 months. The message is obviously to improve efficiencies and effective utilization of the resources that we have to achieve the targets and goals that we have. The targets and goals were set when the budget was set. That's essentially what you do on an annual basis. You set your targets and goals, and you're given the budget to achieve those particular things. And the working week, therefore, in that regard, is irrelevant in this sense, that your objective is over the year achieve particular targets that you set. Whether you do it in 3 days, 4 days a week, or 10 days a week, doesn't really matter in that context.
Premier Toke Talangi says this new arrangement will not include teachers who are required by law to work 5 days a week, but they will be compensated. He also said that contracted workers will be required to work the full week. As for staff who are obligated to work at the airport, they will be able to take their day off on a Monday.
I think it's a silly idea, and I think that the Commission and the Premier, because four of them are involved, that they haven't discussed it with the public service or listened to their views. And, some of their views is that they should be able to take an alternative day off each week so that the office stays open for the 5 days. The other thing is the government now will expect those workers for the 4 days to do 5 days work and work harder to get that work done and get no pay for it. So I think it's foolhardy, and if we can, we could have paid the public servants, given them a 5 or 20% increase, or even a 15, if you can't afford the 20%. So, and the public servants are very reasonable, and they, would accept that. And perhaps the government could, in the next 6 months or next 12 months, give another pay rise to, come up to this 20% that he promised for the public servants.
The 4-day work week trial period will end on the 4th of July, and the scheme will be reviewed to determine whether it will continue. A breach to Niue's border security has locals perplexed with an unexpected aircraft landing. Border security officials say that the plane, owned and piloted by a Swiss national, landed at Hannan International Airport on Sunday, a week ago, without authorization. The solo flight from Fiji landed this individual in a tight spot when the aircraft ran out of fuel, forcing him to land in Niue without prior landing rights or permission. Adding to his woes, the fuel required to refuel his plane was unavailable on island and the airport was closed. According to the Chief of Police, Tony Edwards, in order for any aircraft to enter Niue's airspace and borders, they must have a flight plan and a request permission to aviation authorities. Upon getting this approval, requirement for information would be provided on what type of aircraft they're flying and what kind of fuel is required to determine whether it is stocked on island and if Niue could accommodate their flight plan. Although a flight plan was received, no request for permission was submitted and therefore authorization was not given by Niue officials. Whilst Border Security determined what breaches had been made, the pilot stayed at Matawai Resort and immigration officials held on to his travel documents for processing purposes to be returned once he was ready to leave the island. Also, in order to get fuel for his aircraft, this person had to charter a flight to bring fuel into the island at a cost of $18,000, and he was also charged a rather hefty fine for breaching Niue's airspace. To end this strange saga, the Swiss national departed the island on Wednesday the 15th with quite a story to tell and a trip that proved to be a lot more challenging and costly than what was expected. Border officials say that in order to avoid these complications, people need to follow rules and regulations set in place to secure our borders, as Niue is a sovereign nation. Niue police say that the festive season was generally safe, with their campaigns to offset the number of drink drivers and those who continue to speed. Police were out in numbers, patrolling the roads and even setting up checkpoints. Although the festive season was somewhat quiet, there were a few accidents.
We got a substantial number of those who were breath tested, and I think it was a good number. Although I say it's a good number, but I think it was quite high for the period that we ran these operations. We were looking at about 12 who were breath tested, and that's quite high. But it was good because we were out there to monitor this. You know, that message is clear. And that's our main focus. We want to make sure that people get that message, to make sure that, you know, when they're on the road, when they're driving, please don't drink, and also to cut down on the speeds. The majority of those who we did breath test were locals. They belong here to Niue. The accidents that we did have last year were from overseas, and it's probably something that we need to sort of talk to to our rental car places, where they've handed out their vehicles to our local tourists who have arrived, probably not aware of how to use motor vehicles, in particular motorbikes. So that was only the one accident that we did have during Christmas Day. So, we were quite happy with that as well. But during the festive season, I think all up we've had about 5 accidents. So again, I haven't compared those numbers to our last time, but I could say that it was quite a quiet festive season. Although we had a lot of local tourists come back home, I think they enjoyed themselves, and that was the main thing, is to ensure that everyone was to have a good time.
While the island was quite busy in the new year with the age-old tradition of takai, that meant police were also working out in the community. Chief Edwards says that the outlook for this year is to increase their community presence and to forge greater trust with the public that will enable them to be more forthcoming in reporting incidents and working together. The new year got off to a great start with much celebration. On the 6th of January, over 60 people started the year off with a challenge to walk around the whole island in the Puhomana Takai Hui, the healing walk coordinated by Taonga Niue in partnership with Puhomana founders, the Niue Health Department and 350 Niue. The event highlighted 2014 as a significant year, marking 40 years since self-government, 100 years since World War I, as well as campaigns to promote healthy lifestyles and climate change action and solutions. Some as young as 7 joined in the walk, and even 6 police officers, including the Chief of Police, provided that extra sense of security. In the end, there were 22 people who completed the whole entire walk, and they were awarded special certificates for their efforts. At the end of the week on Saturday, the 11th of January, that marked the island-wide takai, with most villagers coming together to decorate their vehicles and make as much noise as possible to bring in the new year. Takai is one of the most greatly anticipated events for the year, where for one day a year, all roads can get congested and any vehicle that can make the complete trip are allowed on the road. For some villages like Makefu, Waya and Alupi North, they were only able to have their takai last weekend due to village and family commitments. But for the police, this is also normally a very busy time. Judging by the looks of things, 2014 definitely started on a very high note, where lolly scrambles were the order of the day and costumes of all sorts, bright and bold, proved popular. New Year's unique New Year tradition remains strong, and the hope is for a prosperous year ahead. Elderly folk on the island were treated to a tour of some of government's development projects yesterday. The field visit started at the Whalefono with a greeting from government officials before going to the solar project site funded by Japan at Tuila, a drive around the proposed area for the new primary school located at Paliasi. The trip continued on to Tamkotonga to the new Matawai resort units before returning to see the airport extension. Light refreshments were served at Arlena's before a visit to the new water tank production site near the Public Works Department. However, one Common Role member questioned why government deemed it necessary to hold these field visits, now so close to election time, and on a day that Niue Assembly was meant to meet to discuss issues of national importance. However, it appeared that those who were fortunate to make it enjoyed the sights and the ability to ask any questions about the developments, seeing firsthand the progress made since the last trip was organised. We spoke to some of the elderly folk who commented about the changes and direction government is taking with assistance from donor partners and the benefits for the island. The field visit was coordinated by the Department of Community Affairs. And to end this news bulletin, a new initiative from the Broadcasting Corporation for this year will open up the opportunity to the public to contribute to news bulletins. BCN's General Manager Trevor Siakia says that this is one way of engaging with the people, keeping up to date with developments in the communities. There will be some instances where the news team may not be able to film or capture certain events that members of the public can. In addition to that, the new idea will hopefully generate interest in the field of media and communications. And for anyone keen to send in contributions, whether they be video clips or still images to be featured on the news, they can be dropped off to the news team at BCN. However, the selection of what is actually used and featured in each news bulletin will be at the discretion of the corporation. Public contributions will be acknowledged, and this new scheme starts this week. That concludes tonight's news bulletin. We do hope that you can join us for our next news bulletin next week, and do have a great weekend ahead.